to Deep Sleep Stories. If these stories have helped you through restless nights, please leave a review. Reviews are what help this podcast grow, reach more listeners, and stay alive. Without them, even something meaningful can slowly disappear. So if this show has brought you comfort, that small act truly helps keep it going. Now, settle in, and let's begin.
Welcome to Deep Sleep Stories. Settle in now and let your body grow heavy and warm as you listen, because tonight you'll drift into a gentle tale about starfish beneath a moonlit boardwalk, where the tide keeps quiet secrets and the sea breathes in a slow, steady rhythm. Take a comfortable breath in, easy and unhurried, and let it out as though you're softly fogging a window. Feel the small muscles around your eyes loosen. Let your jaw unclench. Allow your shoulders to slide down as if gravity has remembered exactly how to hold you. Imagine the hush that arrives when evening turns velvety and kind. The air is cool, but not sharp. It carries a faint taste of salt, clean and familiar, like a memory of the ocean carried on a breeze. Somewhere nearby, a wave folds onto sand with a quiet, foamy sigh, then retreats. Another follows. The sound repeats, not demanding attention, only offering reassurance. With each breath, you can let go of what you carried today. The thoughts that loop and tug can soften at the edges. You don't have to solve anything right now. You don't have to do anything at all. Simply listen and let the story carry you like water carries a leaf, like a gentle current carrying you toward rest. Picture a long wooden boardwalk stretching along the shore. The planks are weathered smooth by time, by footsteps, by wind and sun and sea spray. The railings are cool under the palm. Lanterns hang at intervals, glowing with a mellow amber light, as though the evening itself has been warmed and poured into glass. Beyond the boardwalk, the ocean is a wide, dark silk sheet, stitched with faint silver where moonlight touches it. As you breathe, feel your mind become quieter, like a room at dusk, where corners blur and soften, and everything becomes calm and simple. And now, without effort, let the story begin to move a little farther from you, like a boat easing away from a dock so you can relax even more deeply. In a small coastal town where the night smelled of tide and driftwood, there was a boardwalk that seemed to belong to the sea as much as it belonged to the people. In daylight, it filled with laughter, with sandals tapping along the planks, with the bright clink of ice in glasses and the distant call of gulls. But at night, when shops had closed and the last lights of the arcade had gone dim, it became something else. It became a place for listening. The boardwalk hovered above the sand on sturdy wooden pilings, and beneath it the beach gathered shadows. There the world was cooler and quieter, sheltered from the wind. The air was full of small sounds, the whisper of grains shifting, the little clicks of shells settling, the faint creak of timber as the structure adjusted itself with the temperature. And below that, closest to the waterline, the tide moved in its unhurried way, rising and falling as though the ocean was breathing in its sleep. On a night when the moon was round and gentle, a person named Leora walked the boardwalk alone. She was not in a hurry. Her steps were slow and untroubled, as if she had learned the value of arriving gradually. She wore a light sweater against the sea breeze, and her hair lifted and settled with the wind, soft as a ribbon. Leora had come to the shore for quiet, not for anything urgent. Her days had been full lately, not with dramatic troubles, but with the ordinary weight of life. Conversations that lingered in her mind, tasks that stacked like driftwood, moments that demanded attention. She loved her life truly, yet she had begun to miss something simpler. So she walked at night, and the boardwalk was mostly empty and the ocean seemed to speak more clearly. The lanterns cast pools of light on the planks. Between those pools were stretches of shadow where the wood turned almost black, and the world beyond the railing became an ink wash of sea and sky. Leora paused now and then, resting her hands on the smooth top rail. She listened to the waves and to her own breathing, and she felt something inside her begin to loosen. Far below, the tide was nearing its lowest point, and the sand beneath the boardwalk had pulled back from the waterline, revealing patches of rock and shallow pools where the ocean had left pieces of itself behind. Tide pools, round and patient, filled with sea water that reflected the moon like small mirrors. Leora leaned over the railing and looked down. She could see the pale shine of wet stones. She could hear the tiny, secret sounds of the shore at rest. A faint drip somewhere, the delicate crackle of foam dissolving, the soft tap of a wave reaching just far enough to touch the edge of a pool. And then she noticed a glow. It was not bright, not the sort of glow that announces itself. It was more like a whisper of light, a hint of luminescence tucked beneath the boardwalk where the shadows gathered. Leora frowned gently, not in concern, but in curiosity. She watched for a moment, thinking it might be a reflection from a lantern above or the moon itself shifting behind a cloud. But the glow stayed steady and calm. She followed the boardwalk until she found a set of steps that led down to the beach. The stairs were narrow and steep, their wooden edges worn smooth. Leora descended carefully, her shoes making soft, hollow sounds. When her feet reached the sand, she felt the coolness of it through the soles, and she breathed in the darker, richer scent beneath the boardwalk. Salt, seaweed, damp wood, and the faint sweetness of something like crushed shells. Under the boardwalk, the world was dim and sheltered. Moonlight filtered through gaps between the planks overhead, laying thin stripes of silver across the sand. The pilings rose around her like a quiet forest of wood, each one wrapped near its base with barnacles and sea-worn texture. The ocean was visible beyond, a moving band of darkness that shone where waves curled and folded. Leora walked toward the glow, letting her footsteps be slow and careful, as if she were entering a room where someone was sleeping. The light came from a tide pool nestled between rocks. The pool was shallow, its surface almost still, with only the faintest tremble when distant waves sent subtle vibrations through the ground. Within it, the glow pulsed softly, not like a blinking signal, but like a slow inhale and exhale. Leora crouched near the pool, her breath fogged faintly in the cool air. She leaned closer, and the glow resolved into small, star-shaped forms resting on the stones beneath the water. Starfish. They were not the bright orange or red that people imagined in souvenir shops. These starfish were pale, pearly creatures tinted with soft blues and pinks, as if they had borrowed their colors from dawn and moonlight. Their bodies were textured with tiny bumps that caught the light, and beneath their skin, a gentle shimmer moved, as though they carried a pocket of starlight within them. Leora watched, mesmerized. The starfish clung to rocks with quiet certainty, their arms spread in patient symmetry. They did not hurry, they simply existed, as calm and steady as the tide. As she looked, she noticed something else. The pool was not only home to starfish, there were small anemones like soft underwater flowers, their tentacles waving slowly, as if greeting the world. There were clusters of tiny shells, some empty, some occupied by cautious hermit crabs. There were strands of seaweed that drifted with the slightest movement of water, like long hair floating in a slow dance. The glow from the starfish made everything look gentler. The rocks seemed smoother. The water seemed deeper than it was. The shadows beneath the boardwalk softened, becoming something like velvet. Leora felt her heartbeat slow. She realized she had been holding tension in her chest, a subtle tightness she hadn't noticed until it began to release. She exhaled, long and easy, and the air around her felt even quieter. The starfish, though still, seemed aware. Not in a human way, not with eyes that tracked her, but with a calm presence, like a room that holds your footsteps without echoing them too sharply. Leora had the strange sense that she had stepped into a place that had always been there, waiting, and she had simply arrived at the right moment to notice it. She rested her hands on her knees and watched the shimmer. A gentle sound, almost too soft to be called a sound, drifted up from the pool. It was not a splash, not the click of shells, not the creak of wood. It was more like a hum, like the faint vibration of a singing bowl far away. It seemed to come from the water itself, and yet it carried a shape, a pattern, a slow rhythm that matched the ocean's breathing. Leora tilted her head, listening. The hum wrapped around her thoughts, smoothing them. It loosened the edges of her worries, as if they were knots being gently untied by patient fingers. It did not erase her memories or her responsibilities. It simply invited them to rest for a while, like coats hung neatly by a door. In the shimmering water, a starfish shifted. One arm lifted slightly, then settled again. Another starfish farther in the pool moved with a slow, deliberate grace, inching across the stone as if exploring a familiar path. Leora watched, her eyes growing heavier, not from boredom, but from the comfort of something slow and certain. She found herself smiling faintly. She whispered, though she wasn't sure why, Not words that needed to be heard, just a breath of appreciation. The sound vanished into the soft air under the boardwalk. The hum continued, and in it Leora began to sense something like a story. Not spoken in language, but carried in feeling. The feeling told of a world beneath the boardwalk that was wider than anyone guessed. A world that existed in layers, sand and rock, water and shadow, moonlight and quiet. It told of the tide pool as a small universe, complete and perfect. It told of starfish that collected light and held it gently, like lanterns that did not burn. As the hum deepened, Leora's imagination drifted without effort, like a feather on a slow breeze. She pictured the starfish beneath the water as tiny guardians of the shore, not warriors, not sentinels braced for conflict, but keepers of calm. Each one, with arms spread, seemed to hold the peace of the pool in place. Their shimmer felt like a promise that even in darkness, there could be softness. Even in stillness, there could be quiet life. Leora blinked slowly. The stripes of moonlight above her shifted as a cloud passed overhead. For a moment, the world dimmed further. Then the moon returned, and the pool's glow seemed brighter in contrast, like a secret revealed. She leaned closer to the water, careful not to disturb it. The hum now felt like a lullaby that had always existed, sung by the ocean to the shore. It was a lullaby without words, made of rhythm and warmth. Leora's thoughts floated. She remembered walking along this boardwalk as a child, holding a grown-up's hand, her eyes wide with wonder at the arcade lights and the smell of sweet treats. She remembered the way the ocean had seemed endless then, a great dark mystery that could swallow the world. But she also remembered feeling safe, because the waves had always returned, always kept their slow promise to come and go. Now, under the boardwalk, she felt that same safety, but deeper. Not the safety of being held by someone else, but the safety of being held by the earth and sea themselves. The pilings rose around her like pillars of a quiet temple. The water shone like a small altar of light. A breeze slipped through cool against her cheek. It carried the distant sound of a buoy bell, low and hollow like a heartbeat in the dark. The bell's tone faded, and the ocean resumed its steady breath. Leora shifted her weight in the sand, settling more comfortably. The sand beneath her was cool and slightly damp, packed firm under the boardwalk's shelter. She felt grounded, as if the world had gently anchored her in place. In the tide pool, the starfish shimmered on. Time felt different here. The night did not rush. The waves did not hurry. Even the shadows seemed content to linger. Leora watched as a small crab emerged from beneath a stone. It moved sideways in careful steps, then paused as if listening. Its shell glinted faintly in the starfish glow. Then it continued, disappearing into a crevice where seaweed waved like curtains. The starfish remained the quiet center of the scene, and then, as if the hum had opened a door, something else became visible. At the edge of the tide pool, where water met rock, there was a thin line of light that did not belong to moon or lantern. It was a delicate seam, as if the world had been stitched together there with luminous thread. It pulsed in time with the starfish shimmer. Leora's breath caught, not in fear, but in awe. She leaned closer, her eyes soft and curious. The seam of light widened slightly like a small smile. The water at that edge of the pool deepened, becoming darker, clearer, as though it were not shallow at all, but a window. Within that dark clarity, Leora saw movement. Not a fish, not a wave, but something like a slow drift of tiny sparks, like plankton or dust motes caught in sunlight. The sparks swirled, forming gentle spirals. The hum grew warmer. It seemed to invite her not to step forward with her body, but to step forward with her attention, with her imagination, with the part of her that could dream without strain. So Leora did. She let her gaze rest on the seam of light, and she let her mind drift through it as easily as a sigh. On the other side, the world beneath the boardwalk expanded. It was still the shore, still the tide pool, still the rocks and seaweed. Yet everything felt more spacious, as though the night had unfolded into a larger room. The water was deeper, not physically, but in feeling. The glow of the starfish traveled farther, illuminating hidden corners of the underworld beneath the planks. Leora imagined herself moving gently through this space, not walking, not swimming, but floating, weightless, as though she were made of moonlight. There were more tide pools now, scattered like small lakes among the rocks. Each one held its own quiet life. Anemones like blossoms, shells like tiny homes, strands of seaweed like ribbons. And in many of them, starfish shimmered. The starfish were everywhere, resting on rocks, climbing slowly along surfaces, tucked into shaded crevices. Their glow was soft, never glaring, never harsh. It made the underboardwalk world feel like a hidden village lit by lanterns, and the hum, now clearer, seemed to come from all of them at once, a chorus of calm. In this expanded world, the boardwalk above felt less like a human structure and more like a bridge between realms, the bustling daylight world and this quiet, luminous night world. The pilings were still there, rising upward, but now they seemed ancient and wise, like trees that had been rooted here long before. Anyone built shops or strung lanterns. Leora drifted among them in her imagination, feeling no need to direct herself. The current of the story carried her. She approached a larger pool, one that lay closer to the waterline where the ocean could reach it during higher tides. This pool was clear as glass. Its surface reflected the moon and the underside of the boardwalk in a perfect mirror. Along its edges were clusters of smooth stones, each one slick with seawater. In the center of this pool rested a starfish larger than the others, though still not enormous. It was pale as sea foam, with a faint blush of lavender along its arms. Its shimmer was steady, slow, like a candle flame that never flickers. As Leora drifted nearer, the hum seemed to gather around this starfish as though it were a gentle leader, a quiet heart of the Boardwalk chorus. The starfish did not speak in words, yet Leora felt a greeting, soft and warm, like being welcomed into a room where a fire is already burning. The greeting carried a feeling of permission. Permission to rest, permission to let go, permission to stop gripping the day so tightly. Leora felt her shoulders loosen again, even in imagination. She felt her breath deepen. In the pool, the larger starfish shifted slightly, its arms adjusting as if it were settling more comfortably against the rock. The movement was slow, unhurried, and strangely soothing, like watching someone arrange a blanket and then sigh contentedly. The hum softened into something like a gentle pulse that traveled through the water and into the stones, and then into the air, and then into Leora's own awareness. It was as though the shore itself had a heartbeat, calm and steady, and the starfish were helping it remember. Around the larger pool, smaller starfish glowed, their lights blending like a field of tiny stars reflected in water. In the distance, beyond the pilings, the ocean lifted and fell. Waves rolled in with a soft murmur, reaching toward the shore, then sliding back. Leora drifted closer to the pool's surface, as if she could place her hands into the water without disturbing it. She imagined the coolness, the gentle resistance, the way water would wrap around her fingers like silk. The larger starfish's shimmer brightened a touch, as if in response to her attention. The hum became a lullaby again, slow and repetitive. Within the lullaby, Leora sensed images. The boardwalk in daylight, with happy footsteps. The boardwalk at dusk, when lanterns lit. The boardwalk at night, when the world quieted. Beneath it all, always the tide pools waited, collecting seawater and starlight, holding small lives. The images were not sharp. They were dreamy, like scenes viewed through gauze. They drifted in and out, each one leaving behind a feeling of comfort. Leora realized the Boardwalk world was not separate from her own life. It was simply a hidden layer, a reminder that beneath busy surfaces, there could be stillness. Beneath the clatter of thoughts, there could be a soft hum. Beneath the day's bright demands, there could be a small pool of calm. She let that understanding settle in her like warm tea. In her imagination, she floated a little farther, letting the Boardwalk realm show itself. There were tiny caves between rocks where water pooled in shadow, and in those caves, starfish glowed faintly like embers. There were stretches of sand where the sea had left patterns like ripples in silk, and over those patterns, thin streams of water trickled back toward the ocean, sparkling. Here and there, small fish darted, their movements quick, but not frantic, like commas in a slow sentence. They flashed silver in the starfish light and vanished into darkness. There were snails clinging to stones. Their shells spiraled like little galaxies. There were mussels clustered together, closed tightly, keeping their own quiet secrets. Everything in this world moved with purpose but without urgency. The sea did not rush. The creatures did not scramble. The night held them all in a gentle cradle. The hum continued, steady as breathing. Leora's attention drifted back to the larger starfish in the central pool. She imagined it as an ancient being, not in years, but in calm. It seemed to understand the rhythm of tides, the patience of stones, the way moonlight traveled across water. It seemed to carry that understanding in its glow, offering it freely to anyone who paused to notice. In the hush of the under-boardwalk realm, Leora felt her thoughts slow until they were no longer thoughts at all, but sensations. The coolness of water, the softness of light, the steady pulse of the hum. She imagined lying down on the sand beneath the boardwalk, safe and sheltered. She imagined looking up at the planks overhead, seeing moonlight stripe them, watching shadows shift gently as the ocean moved. She imagined the sound of waves as a blanket of sound, covering her with comfort. The starfish glow became like a nightlight in a child's room, making darkness friendly. In the central pool, the larger starfish's shimmer spread outward, touching the edges of the water like a soft aura. The smaller starfish responded, their lights sinking, as though the whole under-boardwalk realm was breathing together. And then the seam of light, the delicate stitch between worlds, seemed to narrow again, not closing with finality, but simply easing back into its quiet place. The under-boardwalk realm remained, but it felt less like a separate space and more like a feeling that Leora could carry with her. In the real tide pool beneath the boardwalk, Leora blinked slowly. The water was shallow again, the rocks close beneath the surface, the glow still there, patient and calm. The hum remained, softer now, like a memory of music heard from another room. She sat back on her heels and looked around. The night was deep. The lanterns above cast warm light through the gaps in the planks. The ocean beyond the pilings sighed and shifted. A gull called once in the distance, then fell silent, as if even it didn't wish to disturb the hush. Leora felt lighter, not because anything in her life had changed, but because something in her had unclenched. She had found a pocket of stillness hidden beneath the familiar boardwalk, and it had reminded her that stillness was always available, waiting quietly like a tide pool left behind by the sea. She stayed a while longer, simply listening. The starfish did not hurry. The hum did not stop. The water trembled now and then when a wave reached farther than before, sending a faint ripple through the pool. Each ripple made the starfish glow dance slightly on the stones, like light moving across a ceiling. Leora breathed in, and the scent of salt filled her chest. She breathed out, and the cool air took her worries with it. Her eyelids grew heavy. The world blurred gently at the edges, as if it were becoming a dream. She felt the sand beneath her cool and supportive, and she realized she could rest here, just for a while, letting the shore hold her. Above, the boardwalk creaked softly, not with footsteps, but with the subtle shifting of wood. The sound was comforting, like a house settling at night. The hum from the tide pool became a quieter lullaby, as though it were learning her breathing and matching it. Inhale, exhale, inhale, exhale. Leora's mind drifted again, but now it drifted towards sleep rather than story. Images rose and faded, a starfish glowing like a small star, moonlight striped across planks, waves folding onto sand, a warm lantern halo, a pool of water holding calm. She did not need to hold on to any of it. It was enough to let it pass through her, leaving behind softness. When she finally stood, she did so slowly, as if not to startle the night. She looked once more at the tide pool. The starfish shimmered on, unchanged, steady, as though they had always been there and always would be. The hum felt like a gentle farewell, a promise that this calm place would remain whenever someone needed to remember how to rest. Leora climbed the steps back to the boardwalk. Each step was unhurried. When she reached the top, the lantern light warmed her face. She walked along the planks, hearing the quiet tap of her shoes, the distant hush of the sea, the soft whisper of wind along the railings. She paused once, leaning on the railing again, looking out at the ocean. The moon's reflection trembled on the water like a silver path. Leora let her gaze soften. The world felt wide, but not overwhelming. It felt like a great, slow breath. She continued walking, and the boardwalk carried her gently, plank by plank, toward home. Behind her, beneath the boardwalk, the tide pools waited in their patient way. The starfish glowed softly, holding their small lights against the dark. The hum lingered like a lullaby sung by the sea, a quiet music that did not demand to be heard, only offered itself to the night. The ocean breathed in, the ocean breathed out, and as the town slept, as lanterns dimmed and shadows deepened, the shore remained calm and constant, keeping its secret world of shimmering starfish beneath the boardwalk. Now the story begins to slow like waves easing after a long day. The lanterns feel softer. The moonlight feels farther away like a gentle blur in the sky. The sound of the ocean becomes even more regular, more soothing, as if it is rocking everything toward sleep. Somewhere beneath the boardwalk, the tide pool glows faintly. A starfish rests with its arms spread, perfectly still, perfectly safe. The hum is quiet now, barely more than a feeling like warmth under a blanket. Breathing is easy. The mind can rest. Let the images fade to softness. Let the shore become a distant comfort. Let the boardwalk's quiet creak become part of the night's lullaby. Let the ocean's steady rhythm carry you down, down into deeper calm. And when you are ready, you can drift fully into sleep, as gently as moonlight sliding over water, as softly as a wave settling back into the sea. Good night, dear traveler. Sleep well.